Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello learners, welcome back to the course on AI in Human Resource Management. Today we move to the fourth module where we look into HR analytics. Now this has been a topic which is gaining momentum over the years, especially with the industry people. So I would like to bring in an industry focus, specifically taking some case studies also into the content. So AI in HR analytics, people analytics and smart HRM. I'm Dr. Cyril Issac. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Business, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Now, when you look into AI in human resource management, HR analytics, I would quote it like this, has become the backbone of AI in human resource management. So, like what we generally understand as Xerox is synonymous to the photocopying industry altogether. When you talk about AI in human resource management, people generally talk about HR analytics. Now, let's understand what is HR analytics. It is not mere data analytics or predictions. It has gone from that. Now, things are descriptive. Now, things are diagnostic. Now, things are prescriptive. So, there has been a lot of dimensions that have evolved over the years with respect to human resource or HR analytics specifically. Let's look into that in greater detail. What is HR analytics? When you look into HR analytics, is not merely data science. It's not just science. It's a blend of art and science. When you look into the HR analytics as a topic or as a discipline, you will see that the art part, when I'm talking about it being a blend of arts and science, the arts part helps us to observe the world while the science shows people to take action. So basically there is the normative part and there is a certain level of deterministic part associated with that. Human resource analytics combines data from various sources like surveys, it could be records, operations, to create an actionable view of current situations and potential futures. So when you look into HR analytics, it is an evidence-based approach which leads to more informed decision making. So whenever we are talking about AI in human resource management, I'll try to encourage you to look into the topic from the decision making point of view. Every single topic in human resource management or organizational behavior for that sake, you have to understand it from the decision making perspective, whether it is increasing the ambit of decision making, whether it is increasing the involvement of individuals per se in the decision making. When you look into HR analytics, it helps organizations gain deeper insights into their workforce, make data-driven decisions and assess the impact of HR metrics, ultimately enhancing the business performance. So when you rely on data, HR professionals can actually make quite informed decisions. They can, rather than merely depending on the instinct or opinion for that matter, evaluate the effectiveness of HR policies and interventions based on solid data. So analytics reveals why something is happening and what the impact is. When you look into, let's say, as an example, we can understand, imagine your company discovers after analyzing data from, let's say, top performing project managers or the top rung hierarchy, previous experience in managing large teams isn't a strong predictor of future project success. If you get some insights like this, with this insight, you can actually now broaden your hiring criteria to include candidates with diverse management practices or management experiences rather than only those with a history of leading big teams. So see how a clear-cut cue is helping you in analyzing the whole situation in an effective manner and bringing out some decisions which is in favor of the large sustenance of the organization altogether. We have to thank Professor Jack Fitness. He is known as the father of HR analytics. He pioneered initiatives like developing HR metrics to evaluate HR activities in 1978 and introducing the HR benchmarking. This was one of the foremost initiatives that Professor Jack did in terms of HR benchmarking, and it paved way for the HR analytics. So it focused on setting the standard for best practices. When we look into HR analytics, we have to understand there are certain terms. So there are certain terminologies which are sometimes wrongly synonymously used. So we have to bring a quite important clarity that is required. That has to be brought in before delving deep into the nuances of HR analytics. So let's look into different aspects like workforce analytics. What do you mean by that? Let's look into people analytics, talent analytics, and HR analytics. Many a time what happens is that we tend to understand HR analytics and all these workplace analytics, people analytics, talent analytics as a subset of this. That's why I've used a Venn diagram to actually show that it is not the case. In fact, there are some intersection possibilities. I do not disagree, but that said, it is essentially having its own flavor. So let's look into that. When you talk about HR analytics, talent analytics, or people analytics, and workforce analytics for that matter, they have become jumbled concepts. Like as I mentioned, they can be used here and there, and they are wrongly interpreted. So when we look into specifically workforce analytics, let's start with that. The first one, workforce analytics. It focuses on the workforce metrics and optimization, applying statistical models to optimize the human resource management. So in general sense, it relates to the size and shape of the workforce. So this is what workplace analytics typically qualifies into. When you talk about people analytics, it is about how people impact the business, how people impact the business. It combines employee data to forecast patterns, specifically it has a flavor in enhancing engagement and to customize strategies that typically aligns with the organizational objectives. When you look into talent analytics for that matter, talent analytics refers to the application of measurement and analytical methods to comprehend, to enhance and optimize the human aspects of business, often intertwined with concepts like big data and people analytics, etc. So I hope that clarifies what workplace analytics is, what people analytics is, what is talent analytics, and how these are different from HR analytics. So this understanding was quite required before venturing into the detail of HR analytics, which is the types of HR analytics. This is where I categorically mentioned in the beginning of the lecture that we are moving from descriptive to diagnostic to predictive, prescriptive. I'll take a moment here. I'll try to explain here the evolution. We started with simple data analytics. We had some understanding of a workforce. Some data actually triggered maybe in terms of recruitment, maybe as we have seen in terms of you need a certain bit of diversity in decision making. Some data has revealed that people who have managed large teams do not essentially become a efficient or some research has showcased that. This was never HR analytics. It had the flavor of analytics. It was more descriptive in nature, but later things evolved to diagnostic. Why the problem is existing, why there is an issue altogether, why the organization is suffering, or what is the typical cause for that suffer. So there was some light thrown into that. That's how the second stage of evolution happened. Then came the predictive analytics. So we understood what is the problem. It was again on a retrospective mode. But when you are looking into a future, the futuristic mode would be more of predictive analytics. So predictive analytics gave a clear-cut idea of what we are actually looking into. And finally, now we are in a stage of prescriptive. We are going one step ahead. We are not stopping at the predictive level. We are trying to be more prescriptive. Let's say this would be the recommended pattern, or this would be the recommended scenario. This has enhanced the horizon of AI in HR. This has enhanced the horizon of HR analytics altogether. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I would like to stress this particular point. It is not merely descriptive in today's world. It was, there was no doubt about it. It was, but now it has moved to diagnostic, it has moved to predictive, and it has moved to the prescriptive level. Let's look into that in greater detail. When you look into the diagnostic, before that, when we look into the descriptive, we see that what happened was the concern what we were having. Traditional HR metrics, if you look into focuses on efficiency, such as it could be turnover rates, it could be something like time to fill, or it could be including hiring costs, or maybe the employee training part, aiming to reduce costs and improve processes. This was the bottom line altogether. Descriptive HR analytics, however, identify and explain patterns in current and historical data. Like if you have come across the previous module, or you have gone through that, you will see that we have described about dashboards, or you have other tools like scorecards, segmentations, regular reporting as a foundation for analytics efforts. So, all this pertain to what we understand today as descriptive analytics. What happened? That was the question you were typically answering. When you move to the next aspect, diagnostic, what is happening now and why? This is the question you are mainly concerned when you are moving to the diagnostic pattern. So, diagnostic HR analytics, it analyzes data to determine the underlying causes of past events and behaviors. Make no mistake, actually understanding that it analyzes data of past events and behaviors. That is not anything which is significantly different from descriptive. But diagnostic, for example, let's say there will be some examination of data on unplanned absences to identify the factors contributing to absenteeism. So, it is giving some diagnostic insights into what happened or what is happening now and why it is happening. This why part is something which is more critical, and the present tense of this why is more, or making it more relevant. So, by investigating, let's say, these patterns, organizations can gain insights into the reasons behind previous occurrences and take informed decisions to address similar issues in the future. Then we have the next level, which is the predictive HR analytics. Here, we are looking into the future, as I mentioned. What will happen? And again, the most significant question, why? Predictive analysis encompasses various methods like, let's say, statistics, modeling, data mining, which actually utilize current and past data to forecast future outcomes. So, if it certainly focuses on probabilities and potential impacts, often using models to improve the likelihood of, let's say, making accurate decisions. It could be in hiring, it could be in training, it could be in promotions, whatever be the functions of HRB. So, this is the third development that has happened in HR analytics. And finally, we have the prescriptive part. What should you do about it? This is the most critical answer. If you have an answer for this, even before the conceptualization of the entire scheme of things, you are at a greater pedestal. There is no doubt about it. Prescriptive analytics extends beyond predictions by offering actionable recommendations and strategies for workforce optimization. So, it certainly analyzes complex data to forecast outcomes such as decision options and illustrate different business impact. For instance, it might use models to assess how various investment in actual employee training affects the financial results totally. So, this is the prescriptive part. What should you do about it? Now, let's look into the different data analysis levels that are being observed in HR analytics. We'll start with the first one, the organized part. Here you will see that it is moving still around the descriptive pattern, then we'll move to the predictive, then we'll move to the prescriptive. This is how we actually try to jump. So when you are looking into the organizing aspect, we try to gather data. Predictive modeling in analytics actually involves using statistical methods. I already mentioned about that to forecast outcomes. Now, this process begins with collecting and organizing human capital data, which can be challenging since most corporate databases were actually initially built for accounting and not analytics specifically. So that data management initial troubles are always there. That's why the initiation is always significant. So when you look into such initial hiccups, that is overcome over time. HR systems actually evolved. They mainly recorded data without predictive capabilities. So as a result, what happened was that installing new programs for analytics can be costly and time consuming. So when the focus was not on prediction part, it was just on a more of a descriptive scenario. Things have changed now. You have to adapt to the changing environment, and now the things are costly. For example, a Fortune 20 company struggled for 2 years almost to adapt their database for analytics, but had to scale up. There was no options, back expectations due to the system's limitations. Now, this is what you understand in the initial descriptive phase of organize. When you look into display, what happens after organize? It's common sense. After collecting basic data, many companies create dashboards to visually display performance. So this is the second important aspect, often using let's say something like color codes, red, yellow, green. These dashboards, if you have gone through the dashboard part, the current state and the trends, but focus on the reporting past data similar to accounting. Though it shows you a certain present day scenario or state and the trend of today, it is again looking into the past data. So they don't predict the future as they lack assumptions about the upcoming conditions. There are no modeling or no heuristics that are actually considered the assumptions about upcoming conditions. While trends aren't extendable, dashboards help perceptive users spot typical opportunities for potential improvements. When you look into the predictive part, as you move from descriptive to predictive, here you have the relate element. At the relating level, data is typically compared to external benchmarks. Here starts a certain level of predictive analysis where you will see that there is a comparison going on, often using other companies as a reference point. So, however, accurate benchmarking, which I mentioned just now, requires ensuring those companies are truly comparable. Now, you are not comparing apples and oranges. That's the researcher's point of view. He or she or the company has to take care of that the companies are truly comparable, which can be difficult without any direct contact. So, misleading comparisons, please note, can arise without understanding the factors behind another company's success. If you don't have full information about an organization, how it has performed over the years, you are just making wrong assumptions, and based on the wrong assumptions, you will have obviously wrong decisions. So additionally, when organizations have, let's say, three types of capital, let's say capital in the sense of human employees, or structural capital in terms of assets like equipment, or let's say some relational capital like connections inside and outside the company, which is also very significant these days. Changes in one area can totally impact the others, making a broader analysis very much crucial. Then you have the fourth element, which is model. Model, here again you are moving into from predictive, you are starting moving to the prescriptive part. Any level of statistical analysis, you will, if you have gone through, you'll see that the moment modeling comes in, you are actually trying to move from the predictive to the prescriptive part. You are trying to predict something, and finally you are trying to recommend. Every single research based on a conceptual framework or conceptual model happens to work on that basis. If you go through any research that is happening on a latent variable, you will acknowledge the fact that it is related to modeling. So when you look into model at this stage, you are shifting from describing past data to predicting future outcomes. Descriptive data typically shows what has happened, but now you need to build a model for future change. Let's say, for example, if you are developing leaders, You might use some leadership assessments to gauge the current abilities. However, it's essential to align the leadership development with future market demands. Otherwise, it does not make any sense. You are just, for the sake of some leadership development, you are doing some trivial, mundane activities. It does not make any sense. Once a leadership model is defined, it can be tested using analytics. Now, finally, when you move to the evaluate level, you will see that prediction gives you a model for the future, as we have seen in the model level, but you need a prescription to achieve it. Let's say like a doctor's diagnosis and prescription. Predictive analytics tells you what might happen, while prescriptive analytics shows the steps needed to make. That's the difference specifically. In business, this means connecting people, connecting policies and process to improve the performance. So you can then measure the changes and use the model to sustain or improve results further. When you look into AI in HR, specifically when you're looking into HR analytics, as we are going through the thick of the course, will see that something which is very critical is the application part. So here is some discussion on the applications of typically HR analytics. This again is not an exhaustive list. As the field is emerging, you'll see that there are a lot of applications that are evolving. But that said, I have to give you a snapshot of what is happening in today's date. When you look into this application specifically, let's start from the job design part, the tailor job roles. Job design analyzes performance data to identify key role requirements and improve job satisfaction. So it helps tailor job roles to align with employees' typical strengths, typical weaknesses, and more importantly, organizational needs. So this data-driven approach enhances, the productivity and employee engagement. Then you have the talent acquisition part. You look into the talent acquisition, you'll see that it aims to find the best fit for a job. We have seen this. If you have attended my OB course, specifically I had mentioned about the talent acquisition. When you look into talent acquisition, as you know or as you are aware now, it aims to find the best fit for a job. So, but evaluating candidates can be, very challenging. It could be challenging if you think you will understand. It is challenging because of the inherent biases, inherent complexities involved. So, HR analytics certainly simplifies this by analyzing top performers' profiles to identify key traits. It could be key traits like educational background or personal interest for that matter. So, this certainly helps HR align their hiring process to attract candidates with similar successful characteristics. We also have the HR analytics being heavily used in compensation. When you look into compensation, data helps HR managers make very critical informed decisions about the packages, salaries, pay equity, rather than relying on similar gut feelings. For instance, instead of just matching a competing offer based on instinct, HR can typically use the data to compare the employee's pay with others in similar roles and market rates. Why to rely on your gut feeling when you have critical information associated? So why not go into that? Let's say we have seen Visya, an HR consultancy, provides insights by analyzing compensation, performance, and other factors, helping managers make decisions based on facts. So compensation has certain level of applications in terms of HR analytics. When you look into applications of HR analytics, we'll see that in performance management also it is greatly used by providing data-driven insights into employee performance and potential. For example, using analytics, a company can identify top performers of the company and analyze their traits to actually create targeted development plans for others. This data certainly help set realistic goals, track progress, and provide specific feedback. So as a result, managers can make informed critical decisions about promotions, about training needs, about, let's say, something like as simple as performance improvements. leading to more effective and personalized performance management. Then you have large chunk of applications going in what is more critical, the recruitment. Recruitment aims to attract the most qualified candidates, and here analytics helps by applying marketing techniques. I'm trying to take a different flavor altogether. How HR analytics is taking marketing techniques to enhance the recruitment experience. So by analyzing data, recruiters can target job ads to specific groups and adjust spending based on ad performance. For instance, programmatic ads use data to reach the right candidates and test different approaches to improve results and reduce the costs associated with recruitment. We also have applications in training. When you are driven by data and analytics, adaptive learning technologies typically customizes courses, activities and test questions to match each learner's pace and preferred learning style. So self-paced online learning, what we are seeing nowadays extensively, is often more cost effective compared to removing employees from their work. Now let's look into the advantages of HR analytics very quickly. We'll see that data-driven decisions enhance accuracy and lessen reliance on intuition. This is something which is very critical when it comes to the HR analytics advantage. A deeper understanding of employee behavior can lead to better strategies for retention and engagement. There's no doubt about it. You know your workforce, you know how people are performing, you have a better insight. Even some of the things which are there in their subconscious mind, if you are able to decipher it, if you are able to take action for towards that action, enhancing the performance, there is nothing like that. There could be recruitment and hiring that can be customized to meet organizational needs by analyzing current and potential employee data. You also have, as part of an HR analytics aspect, it can streamline process, resulting in cost savings in recruitment and training, and even reduce the turnover. When you look into the advantages part, you have to also understand and acknowledge the fact that measuring HR initiative effectiveness allows typically the professionals to show the return on investment, ROI, and justify their value to the leadership. And finally, when you have predictive analytics that can forecast HR trends and patterns, it can enable proactive actions. There is no doubt about it. Now let's quickly look into, having seen the advantages, we also look into the disadvantages of HR analytics. Every coin has both sides. Let's look into the disadvantages very quickly. Limited statistical and analytical skills, because we are relying on this statistical and analytical skills. So if that is limited within the HR department, it can impede the analysis of large data sets. Please note, there is no dearth of large data set. As and when we are living in an era of data and information management, the limited statistical and analytical skills is going to act as a disadvantage. You have varied management and reporting system that can complicate data comparison. We have just now discussed about the possibility of adapting to a newer system, which again becomes very expensive if your system is already not in sync with the futuristic changes or patterns that are evolving. We see restricted access to high quality data and analytical tools that may pose challenges, and increased data collection which can raise ethical concerns. Please make a note of it. Then finally, you have inaccurate or incomplete data that can result in misleading outcomes. Please note, inaccurate and incomplete data that can lead to misleading outcomes, making it essential to ensure data accuracy across the HR systems that are functioning. Now let's look into some metrics measured by HR analytics. When we come into turnover, we have the percentage of employees who leave the organization. The formula is quick. The formula is easy. Number of terminations during period upon number of employees at beginning of period into 100. We have a similar matrix, cost per hire. So these are some of the variables that will effectively enhance our understanding about the workforce that is working with us or working under us. You have cost to recruit an employee as the cost per hire. internal cost plus external cost both together upon total number of hires. Then you have a matrix for absenteeism, very critical. Regularly not showing up at work without a valid reason or notice is what you understand as absenteeism. The formula is number of absent days upon total working days into 100. You also have metrics related to revenue per employee. When you look into revenue per employee, it is the average revenue generated per employee, average revenue generated per employee. So, the total revenue upon total number of employees happens to be the revenue per employee. When you looked into absenteeism, you also have to look into the retention rate. Percentage of employees stayed in the organization is what you understand by retention rate. So, when you look into retention rate, it is nothing but number of employees who stayed upon total number of employees into 100. Finally, you have an offer acceptance rate, which is the rate of offer acceptance in organizations, which could be measured by number of offers accepted upon number of offers made into 100. Now, let's understand one of the most important and most critical part of today's lecture for HR analytics, which is the LAMP framework. Whenever you're talking about HR analytics, without doubt, you talk about the LAMP framework, how data is to be analyzed, how the logic is to be presented, how the measures are done, how the analytics is working on, and finally how the process is being streamlined. So, the LAMP framework happens to be one of the most critical frameworks with respect to HR analytics. Let's look into that very quickly. When you look into LAMP framework, it starts with L, logic. What are the vital connections? That is what is being deciphered here to find valuable insights. So, this particular logic step helps companies find valuable insights by linking data points to understand their meanings and make certainly better decisions. So, it involves identifying connections such as between employee wellness and turnover, or business practices and performance, etc. So, this framework shows how HR practices affect employee attitudes, which in turn impact the customer experiences, maybe sales also, maybe profits also. So, understanding these connections help companies make effective changes. So, analytics reveals these crucial links. Then you have measures. Measures, the second part of the LAMP framework. Good analytics is all about getting the numbers right. So, good analytics system ensure that measurements align with your organization's specific needs and provide accurate data. For example, if high turnover is a concern, focus on employees with key skills, or if absenteeism impacts call centers, it measure should be accordingly. It's crucial to understand the relevance of what you are measuring and how it affects your business to avoid, misguided conclusions, as I've already mentioned. The third important part of the framework is analytics, finding the answers in data. This is what typically the most important part of any HR analytics course is, finding answers in the data. Analytics helps turn data into answers. For example, if employee surveys show high engagement and customer surveys show satisfaction, analytics can actually reveal if engaged employees lead to higher customer satisfaction. So, it allows you to explore the connections between data points and certainly gain the meaningful insights. And finally, you have the process part, making insights motivating and actionable. This part is more challenging, and this is what makes it more critical. Change management, involves using HR analytics to guide decisions and improvements within an organization. By analyzing data, HR can transform information into actionable insights, leading to meaningful changes. So, this approach typically helps solve people-related issues, presents valuable data to business leaders. When leaders understand that human capital decisions impact financial outcomes, they are more likely to support necessary changes for better employee performance and business. Now, we'll quickly look into a case study and we'll conclude the lecture with this case study. This case study is of Coca-Cola Enterprises CCE and how it has used HR analytics very critically and effectively. Let's understand the background first. In 2010, Coca-Cola Enterprises embarked on an HR analytics journey to centralize HR reporting across its global operations. So please do not make a mistake by understanding that HR analytics is a very recent concept. It is not like that. This initiative aimed to establish a robust network, a data analytics program that could enhance decisions making and provide more sophisticated insights, beyond reporting. So what were the key steps used? First one was the foundation building. CCE, automated basic descriptive reports, reducing the time spent on manual tasks by almost 70%, allowing the team to focus on more valuable analytics. It also had certain advanced reporting mechanism, the introduction of an out-of-the-box system which enables CCE to implement standard metrics and descriptive analytics quickly. So this shift allowed the team to progress towards more advanced analytics such as correlation analysis and predictive modeling, etc. Then you had a consultative approach in CCE. By partnering closely with the HR, the analytics team helped to uncover insights that informed more effective HR strategies, such as understanding the correlation between managerial communication and business outcomes. And finally, you had the capability development. CCE emphasized building internal analytics capabilities within HR, ensuring that the team could continue to deliver high quality insights. So finally, we saw some stunning outcomes. CCE successfully transitioned from basic reporting to advanced analytics, which we have seen, enabling data-driven HR practices that improved the employee engagement, that improved the retention altogether, that even improved the overall business performance. So please note, by investing in technology and fostering a consultative culture, what we have understood is that the Coca-Cola enterprise, CCE, has typically had HR analytics journey in a significant, highlighted, contributed manner for its business success. So the journey was not without obstacles. Please note, it included a resource constraint, the need to overcome, the traditional views of HR as a very non-analytical function. I will repeat this, that the traditional HR viewpoint is of a non-analytical function. Things have changed now. However, by demonstrating the value of data-driven decisions, CCE has established HR analytics as a critical component of business strategy. So this was a typical case study which shows us the importance of HR analytics, the role HR analytics is playing in today's world. Now, there are a couple of things, couple of takeaways from this particular lecture. The first point which I mentioned is we have gone from what was just descriptive mechanism to more of predictive aspect, predictive analytics. Things have changed. And this is where the another aspect comes in, where I have typically encouraged you to understand that HR analytics is not a very recent phenomenon. CCE has been using it. That's why I had included the case study to understand or make you understand the impact of HR analytics, the impact of data analytics that can have in human resource management. Things have changed. You must have seen, you must have observed the outcomes. How drastically Coca-Cola Enterprises was able to bring in a culture of more enhanced business performance altogether. So ladies and gentlemen, please note, there can be certain nuances where or the certain aspects where HR analytics is actually evolving. But that said, HR analytics has been a bit old concept, not a very recent concept as we certainly misunderstand it. But that said, the way it is evolving is interesting. From mere descriptive, it has gone to diagnostic. From there, it is going to more of predictive and prescriptive nature. This is what you should take away from this class. I hope this session was fruitful. We'll come up with more details of HR analytics in the next session. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.